Thank you for tuning into the GSMC Soccer Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. We have a great show for you today. We will be discussing. We'll be talking about some of the Olympic soccer games. Specifically, we'll discuss USMNT taking on New Zealand. We'll preview that game. We'll talk about. We'll preview Olympic Men's Soccer Matchday 2. Full preview for all the games coming up on Matchday 2. Interesting set of games, a lot of big games. We'll discuss the best player in CONCACAF. CONCACAF came out with their yearly edition of nominees for their CONCACAF best player, and we'll talk about that. We'll talk about Pep Guardiola not ruling out a contract extension at Manchester City. And then make sure you stick around for the end of the show, where I'll be giving you my thoughts on some of the top soccer headlines going on in the soccer world. Before we start off, I'd like to ask that you like and follow the show. Also, we get a number of questions that come in during the show. So to ensure that your question get right on the air, I ask that you use the tips and donations link at gsmcpodcast.net with your questions. This puts your questions at the top of the list so that I can see it. And it also really helps grow the show. So again, the link is gsmcpodcast.net. We have to start off with the USMNT taking on New Zealand in the men's Olympic soccer preview. It's a big game for the USMNT, the US men's Olympic soccer team. Huge game in the fact that, you start off your tournament with a loss, a 3-0 loss, so goal differential is not really there to protect you at this point now. -3 goal differential. You've put yourself in a position now with New Zealand winning. You basically got to win those final 2 games because, if you were to get 4 points instead of 6, then you're looking at a potential of relying on goal differential to get you past, which, maybe you could still manage if you're able to win the game that you win. More likely than not against Guinea by a high margin. That kind of makes up for the 3-0 defeat, but that's a lot to ask. And what the U.S. knows is, if the U.S. wins these next 2 games, chances are more than likely than not they'll finish second place because, that's exactly where the U.S. want to put themselves in. They don't want to put themselves in a position where they need to rely on some help or goal differential or any of that. They want to be able to control their own destiny. So a win here is ultra important. And look, the performance was really good against France. Really good. Despite the 3-0 victory for France, it wasn't a 3-0 game. If you understand what I'm trying to say, the U.S. had their opportunities in the game. They were bound. They reacted to conceding that goal to Lacazette. Good in the next few minutes, they created a lot of great opportunities, but you don't take advantage of your opportunities, and then you have Michael Olise on the other side that will only need 1 opportunity, and he'll put it away. And then from then on, the game got away from them. You're chasing the game, you're down 2-0. But the U.S. played really good. The U.S. had more than doubled the amount of expected goals that France was able to get. So it was clear, U.S., they're not here to run away. They got players in the team that can play ball. Now, for the U.S., if they want to make a run in this and get out of this group stages, the overage players need to perform like overage players. Now, Walker Zimmerman, I thought, I thought he was decent in the game. Miles Robertson, mistake on a set piece, concedes a goal. Biggest one, Giorgio Mihailovic. He was ultra garbage the whole game. He was weighing down the midfield. He was one of the worst players in terms of, besides Schulte, in terms of outfield players, he was the worst player on the pitch. His touch was off. He wasn't creating nothing. When he had an opportunity to go forward, more than times he was going sideways and backwards. He was not a chain in that midfield. He was a weakness. And for an overage player to be, when you watch the game and you notice that the overage player is the weakness, it's just not good enough. It is such a waste. There was plenty of age-eligible players that are much better at that position than Giorgio Mihailovic would have been. But the overage players, and then there's way better overage players that we could have chose from. Way better overage players that we could have chosen. That would have been a better option than Georgia Mihailovic. He completely stunk it up, and you know, and it's disappointing because you want to put yourself. You don't want to waste an overage player, right? But you know, there's players on that bench that could do a better job than him. I'm sure of it. You know, there has to be a player on that bench. I'm not well aware of the quality that there is on the bench, but there has to be a player that's, at least he can be some sort of a connector. I mean, Georgia Mihailovic, he was a loose block in the chain in that midfield. You know, Tanner Tessman, Gianluca Busio, they did really good holding it on, and they had that imposter in front of them, the overage player, the one that's supposed to be the man carrying the midfield, the leader in that midfield. He was fraudulent. So the overage players have to step up. I think Miles Robinson is better than what we saw yesterday. I think he's better, and I think against underage players, he'll come back and him and Walker Zimmerman will be good enough partnership. I don't know if Georgia Mihailovic. I just think that's his quality. I don't think he's at this level at this point. He's not good enough to play at this sort of level. And it's disappointing that that's what we wasted an overage player on. I think Duncan McGuire, I think we need to see him more. You know, he was a lot more deeper just by nature of how friends are able to play. He needs to be a little bit more deeper in this game. But in this New Zealand game, he needs to be more attacking. He needs to be the number 9. We need to take advantage of his pace going in behind to, you know, be some sort of an outlet ball for the U.S. because, you know, he was mostly doing the dirty work in that France game, and we need more of an outlet. And I think he can provide a slither of that. But the main thing that the U.S. will, you know, the main thing that U.S. The main thing that the U.S. need to perform is the mentality, the bounce back, the mentality. Because here's the issue. The mentality of losing 3-0, they have to put that behind them quickly, and they need to focus only on this game. How they responded to that France game will show in this New Zealand game and the way that they perform, because, you know, losing 3-0 is psychologically a big blow. But in these sort of games, you only have 3 days to the next game. It's the psychological break and how fast you can get over it, how fast you can get on to the next point. Because this is it. You know, this is make or break for a U.S. Olympic team, really. You know, losing that opening game, okay, it's disappointing, but it's expected. But now you're going up against opposition that you're expected to beat, and you're expected to beat in comfortable, not comfortable fashion, but there's just more quality. You know, I watched New Zealand play. They're organized, but they don't have much quality going forward, and they're very beatable. The quality is just not there. And, you know, they're organized, and they had more structure than Guinea. Guinea were just a little bit, even though they had pace and transition and ability, they were a little bit all over the place. They weren't real organized. New Zealand is organized. They're set up. They were more clinical than Guinea, and they got the job done. Just a little bit of that more quality allowed them to get the job done. Now the U.S., you know, I'm expecting the U.S. to have a lot of the ball, to control the majority of the game, and New Zealand to be comfortable being a little bit on the back foot. Keep in mind, the mentality is different. New Zealand is entering this game thinking a point is more than likely good enough, knowing what the U.S. did against France, losing 3-0. They're in the point where they're thinking, okay, a point, you know, we'll be fine with the point. 4 points entering the final game with the U.S. only on 1 point can put ourselves in they put themselves in a good position, because then it just becomes a goal differential battle. Because, you know, if New Zealand get a point in that France game, they're moving on, because the U.S. only has 1 point and can maximum get 4 points. And if New Zealand get a point, now even if New Zealand loses that France game, they put themselves in a position, okay, just don't lose, you know, as long as, you know, keeping track of the goal differential, don't let the U.S. make up the goal differential, and they'll still go through. So it's a must-win for the U.S., and the U.S. need to come out all guns blazing, and they really need to go and attack this game and control possession and get runners into the box and take advantage of set pieces and get midfield runners lay into the box. Get Duncan McGuire to play with his pace in behind. I need Paredes to have more of an active role in this game. I think he was, quite frankly, he was not good enough at his level. I thought Aronson, he was a little lively, a little bit in dangerous areas, but sometimes I was questioning what he was trying to do. There was one play in the first half that he gets the ball on the left-hand side. He's able to break past the defender, and he decides to blast it near post when it's clearly that should be a open up your hips and curl it into the back post. That's the sort of shot that you're supposed to be taking there. And then he had another opportunity where he had runners going in behind, and instead of playing in a cute little ball to one of the runners, he decides to try to blast it full power, and it ends up ricocheting off of a French defender. The decision making has to be better, but overall, you do question how the U.S. can get the goals, because I don't think Duncan Maguire is the guy. Now, I saw, from Griffin Yao, I thought he was really good. Near the end of the game, he had that absolute amazing first touch, was able to get past the defender. I think they whistled a foul, but then he had that amazing finish. Maybe Griffin Yao could be the answer for the USMNT. Something a little bit different. He's a good touch, good finish, lively in a little bit dangerous areas. Maybe that's the sort of spark that they need, because I don't know Duncan Maguire. But Duncan Maguire does give you work rate and pace in behind. That's something I was impressed with, his pace in that France game. He's not slow. You look at him, generally you think he has like that big nature to him. You think he's a little bit slower, but he's on the faster side of it. But yeah, Kevin Bredes needs to take more foot in the game, needs to show the quality he has, because he has quality. Better decision making from Aronson, and just the mentality needs to switch. Then Busio and Tessman, the way that they controlled the game against France and how well they played against France, if they played to the level against New Zealand, I really think we will dominate possession and we have majority of the ball. It's just whether or not we can take advantage, of the opportunities of when we get the ball. That's what it comes down to. Can we take advantage when we get the ball? Can we get a goal? Can we get a goal? Because, with a lot of U.S. teams, that's the main thing. That's the main concern. Do they have the quality to score the goals? Is there quality in the team to get the goal? And I think this is a type of game that there will be pressure on the USMNT, especially later on if they can't get the goal. I think once the U.S. can find an opportunity to get a goal, and look, it doesn't have to be perfect. Sometimes you can take advantage of a set piece, something of that nature. What's wrong with that? You could take advantage of a set piece or something like that. It doesn't have to be you don't have to pass the ball into the goal, score tiki-taka, pass the ball into the goal, or have a 60-yard belter. Sometimes you can take advantage of a set piece or get a lucky ricochet, and that could be something that breaks the window and really opens it up. Because I think if the U.S. can get an early goal, I think the confidence starts springing in this team. I think we see more general play. I think we see players trying stuff that they won't be trying, because there'll be more confidence there. So yeah, I'm really interested to see how this game goes. And obviously, I can't put into words how big of a game this is. It's a huge, huge game for the U.S. men's national team. Olympic hope chances to get out of the group stages, because, it's a must-win. Short break here coming up. When we come back, we'll discuss some of the Olympic Men's Soccer Matchday 2 full preview. We'll discuss the preview of the games.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
Before the break, we talked about the USMNT New Zealand Men's Olympic Soccer preview. We move on to discuss Olympic Men's Soccer Matchday 2 full preview. We move on to talk about Olympic Men's Soccer Matchday preview. So big day coming up of Olympic Soccer Matchday 2. A lot of games going on. Obviously, we talked about last segment, New Zealand versus USA. New Zealand following their victory over Guinea on match day 1. They're looking to win back-to-back games for the first time ever at Olympic Games. And the US, they find themselves in a must-win position. Tanner Tessman, speaking about this game, said it was a tough result against France, but the message is to learn from the past no matter what and to move forward with a winning mentality. New Zealand is a strong team, but we'll prepare and try to get the result that we want. France take on Guinea, which is the other game in this group stage. France coming off their 3-0 win over USA, and Guinea coming off of a 2-1 loss to New Zealand in a game that they showed they have real quality, they have real pace, they have real energy, but just lack that cutting edge and a little bit of organization, and was just a little bit unorganized and a little sloppy in the way that they played. But there was some quality there, and they played some good football. But yes, France, they're aiming to start their Olympic Games with back-to-back wins. This is the first time that they have done that since the 1976 Olympics in Montreal. The only time Guinea has ever faced a European team at the Olympics was also against France when France beat them 3-1. This was at the Olympics in Mexico City, 1968. And this is obviously, Guinea have to go for this game. They need some sort of result to keep it alive against the US. So big game for them. France, they want to continue their forward momentum. They're on momentum right now. They're looking ahead. They want to go win the there's this team looking to win the Olympic Games. There's not a team that's just trying to make it out. This is a team that's trying to win the Olympic Games. They have the best roster, best squad at these Olympic Games. So, they have to continue to impress. They have to continue to dominate. You saw this is a country that actually cares about winning these Olympic Games. If you don't know, Stade Nice is Olympic Marseille Stadium hosted that opening game, and it was a completely packed house. 67,000 completely packed French fans, and it a heavily supported game. So this game, I expect this to be fully packed as France, continue on their Olympic journey. Argentina, they take on Iraq. Argentina take on Iraq, and it's an amazing stat. Messi is the last ever player for Argentina to score a goal in the first half at the Olympic Games in Beijing 2008. They have not scored a goal in the first half of the Olympic Games since then. Iraq, they're coming off. They have a decent history at the Olympic Games. Getting big wins against European teams. Portugal in 2004, in 2000, and then this past weekend, past few days ago, getting that win over who did they beat? Over Ukraine. So, huge game for Argentina. Argentina, are coming off that opening day disaster in which they thought they drew the game at the end. Play got suspended real quick. Players came out 2 hours later for a VAR review, and the VAR ruled that goal off, and it led to Argentina actually losing the game 2-1 against Morocco, and now they find themselves in a position must win against Iraq team that opened off their campaign with a win. So that's going to be a fascinating game in the fact that Iraq has 3 points and Argentina have 0, and sort of similar game that we saw when Argentina took on Mexico at that last World Cup. Obviously the stakes are completely different with the World Cup there and Olympic Games here, but it's a game that Argentina, there's going to be a lot of pressure on their back. It's a must-win for them. The experienced players, the Otamendi's, need to be solid. Alvarez, that's a big one. Alvarez, he was not good enough. Didn't make that much of impact in the game in terms of being vertical, making direct runs in behind to threaten Morocco's back line. He wasn't as creative as we see that he can be. He wasn't at his level, and as an overage player, he needs to be above and beyond. And quite frankly, he wasn't above and beyond that Moroccan game. Now against Iraq, he has a chance to smooth it over. I think Thiago Alameda, one of the more talented players in this team, he needs to have more foothold into the game. He needs to coach the midfield. In Argentina, they took a little bit of a back foot against Morocco. They allowed Morocco to be comfortable in possession early on in that game, and it kind of made Argentina sunk them in for a bit. Argentina, they need to come out all guns blazing. They need to have the sort of response that they had after Morocco went up 2-0, the intensity that they had. They need to be able to maintain that earlier on the game so they can get something out of it early. It's very important for Argentina. So, yeah, it's going to be very, very fascinating to see this game. And yeah, a huge game for Argentina. Ukraine, they take on Morocco. This is Morocco's actually first time being at an Olympic Games, and this is Ukraine's first time being at Olympic Games. They actually scored their first ever goal. Valentin Rubchineski scored their first ever goal from the tournament when they lost to Iraq last week. So yeah, but this is a huge game for Ukraine. Now, obviously, they had a disappointing European Championship. Amid all the geopolitical things going on with their country, they're gonna look at these Olympic Games as something to give something for the fans, and it's a big game for them because they need this to get out of this group after starting off with a disappointing result, and the fact that they have to face Argentina next game. So they need to come out all guns blazing. Need to be more clinical than they were in the first game. Need to control the ball more better than they were able to do against Iraq. They need to be able to withstand. They were comfortable in that game early on. It's when Iraq, started threatening and then got the goal. Then Ukraine, it was a little concerning then on. And that's, Ukraine, they need to be more balanced and need to have more poise in those sort of areas. Maxim Tolovierov, the Ukrainian defender, when talking about this game, said, "I watched highlights of the Argentina-Morocco game, and they're both really good teams and very dangerous. We'll try to watch the mistakes they made in the previous game and use that knowledge to our advantage on the pitch." Yeah, Morocco and Argentina, they are the clear class of this team, and I'll be shocked if those are not the two teams that get out. Those are the two teams, both teams reached the semifinals of the last World Cup. So it shows there's heavy quality amongst those two teams. Morocco's a really, really good team and a rising football nation. The Dominican Republic take on Spain. Dominican Republic, they're still looking for their first ever goal at the Olympic Games and their first ever win at the Olympic Games. They were able to get the 0-0 draw against Egypt on matchday 1, kind of bold, dull, stale game. Spain, they're continuing to have, after making the silver medal last Olympics, they want to continue on their momentum from the opening day win by getting that win past Uzbekistan, who really did threaten them at certain moments in the game. Uzbekistan, they are, they put up a really good fight. Now, Dominican Republic, they find themselves in a position that any point here will be good for them. Spain will be the most difficult team that they'll face in this group, and if they can go into that final game against Uzbekistan with 2 points, with all to play for in that Uzbekistan game, I think that's where Dominican Republic will be happy to find themselves in. Because let's be honest, getting a point against Spain will be a remarkable result. So I think Dominican, they will sit tight, they'll make it hard, they'll close the spaces, they'll really make Spain break them down, and we'll see if these Spanish players have the ability to break down a really tight defense, because I think Dominican Republic, will close the door and, make it difficult for Spain. Uzbekistan, they take on Egypt. Uzbekistan, they're also trying to win their first games at the Olympics. This is their first time being at the Olympics. They lost that opening game against Spain. They were able to get their first goal though with that in the penalty shootout. Egypt, they've only lost one of their previous 6 group stages games at the Olympics. They qualified for the round of 6 or for the quarterfinals at the last Olympic Games. They started off a little dull 0-0 loss to Spain. to a 0-0 draw to Dominican Republic. I say lost, but it was really a draw. But it was a disappointing draw. It's a big game for Egypt in the fact that they need 3 points in this game in the bag to go into that final game against Spain, so they can put themselves in a position that they're not really having to chase anything in that Spain game. That's where they want to find themselves in. And Egypt, they have the quality. I think Egypt has more quality than Uzbekistan, but Uzbekistan is able to play football in the better of them, and they play then better than the sum of their parts. The way that they performed against Spain, I think they can cause this Egyptian team some real issues. Israel, they take on Paraguay. Israel, they're still looking for their first ever win on an Olympic game, or since 1968. Paraguay, they had that horrible opening day game against Japan, and the fact that they went it down a goal early, and then they got that red card, and they just completely lost their way. They just looked so open, and they looked so beatable. And yeah, Paraguay, they need to do a good job putting that game behind them, because this is a must-win for them in this Israel game. You have to get the 3 points, because losing 5-0, you're not putting yourself in a position like US. They put themselves in a little bit of a bad position. Israel, Paraguay, they're in a really horrible position. They need 6 points. But this is a team, with Julio and Ciso, they have some quality, Paraguay. They really do. Japan is always a strong team at the Olympic Games, so I think Paraguay is able to put that behind them. I definitely think they have the quality to get past Israel, because Israel is a weak team, and they weak team in general. Like, they were lucky to get that point against Mali, in my opinion. Japan versus Mali, Stade de Bordeaux. This is a big game in terms of, I think this is our two really good teams. I think Mali is a really good team. In the way that they performed against Israel, I thought they had the better of opportunities. They just weren't clinical enough. In Japan, they're always good at the Olympics. They play really good football. They don't even have any overage players, but they won the game 5-0 last game, and they play some beautiful football. They're clinical with their opportunities. They take advantage of set pieces. They have brilliant finishers all over the park. And I'm excited for this game, because I think this is a game between two good teams. Shota Fuhio, Japanese forward, is talking about this game, saying we did well to win our first match, but that counts for nothing if we lose the next one. We're preparing now as well as we can for this next match. So yeah, we're excited to see these next matches coming up. Short break here coming up. When we come back, we'll talk about the best player in CONCACAF.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
Before the break, we talked about Olympics Men's Soccer Matchday 2. We'll move on to discuss the best player in CONCACAF. There was a CONCACAF came out with a list, their best player nominations, and it was a interesting, they did it for the men's and women's, and the men's had interesting ones. They had Leon Bailey, midfielder for Villa, Adalberto Carrasquilla, the Panamanian midfielder who plays for the Dynamo, who's been having a good season at MLS, Alphonso Davies from Bayern Munich, Jonathan David for Lille, Santiago Jimenez for Feyenoord, Pulisic for AC Milan. So let's just break down each one real quick. First of all, Adalberto Carrasquilla, he's playing in MLS, so get him off this list. MLS is not to the quality, if you're realistically with the players that are rest on this list, if you're playing in MLS, then, get him off. Like, you're not in this conversation right now. I think they just put an MLS player just for the sake of it. And he's had a good season in MLS. Don't get me wrong, but Come on, bro. Let's be for real. We know this is propaganda. MLS had something to do with the CONCACAF nominations. It must be. There's some sort of money going on the table. Let's be for real. There would have been plenty of other players that are playing actually in Europe that were more deserving of this nomination. So yeah, let's just call it what it is. But let's see. Leon Bailey playing for Aston Villa. Leon Bailey actually had a really good season. At first, he was not really starting. They had Diaby. But once he came in, he was very, very efficient for Aston Villa and very, important in their rise to top four. And he had a brilliant impact and raced Aston. Well, he was part of an Aston Villa team that played better than the sum of their parts. I think Unai Emery implemented him really, really well. And I thought he was really efficient and we saw the best of him. The problem is, it took him a little bit to get going into the season, number one. Number two, CONCACAF, what has he done for Jamaica, really? He wasn't even involved in the summer's Copa America, which I don't fault him for, obviously. He has massive, massive issues with the federation. We understand that. Jamaican Football Federation doesn't happen to be the most efficient of organizations, and they have issues in terms of paying and all that, and he's voiced his issues, but it's hard to blame him for whatever. This is but to be honest, if you're winning the CONCACAF award for best player, don't you need to do something in the international tournaments as well? Jonathan David, he's had a very good season at Lille. He was the second leading goal scorer for Lille. In the Ligue 1. Being the second leading goal scorer in a top 5 league in the world. Scoring, I believe he scored. I believe in Ligue 1, he scored. I forgot how many goals he scored. He scored 19 goals this season. To be second place in League One in terms of goals scored, I think Balogun, he was up there season before. I think that's really, really impressive for a CONCACAF player, and it's something to be commended for. He was also involved in this Canadian team that reached the semifinal at the Copa America. He was a big part of that, scored 2 goals in the Copa America. He's a great striker. He has pace in behind. He's getting linked to a lot of big clubs. He scores goals. He's efficient. He does the dirty work. I really like Jonathan David, and I like his profile, and I think he's a player that can fit in a lot of different systems. I definitely think he has a good chance to. Alphonso Davies, let's be for real. Alphonso Davies, since he's moved to Europe, even in Vancouver, he could be on this list every single time. He should be on this list every time. He can even win it every single time. This season, a little bit ups and downs this season. It's crazy. He's only 23 years old, which is unbelievable. But since the Champions League winning campaign, he hasn't really been quite at those levels, But he was able to play 29 goals this season, had 2 goals, 5 assists, and he was still a very, very solid left back. You remember the wonder goal he had against Real Madrid didn't end up being enough because of the Real Madrid black magic that they always have. But he's a very, very good player, very, very technical, has pace. He gives Canada flexibility in the fact that he can play multiple positions. He could always be up there. I just think the fact that, we're used to this at this point. We're used to his brilliance year in, year out. Kind of makes it difficult. It's kind of like the MVPs in NBA and NFL. You get syndrome. You want the new man syndrome. You want not the new man, but someone who doesn't do it year in, year out because you want someone else to win it. But yeah, he's a very, very good player, and he can win this award every single year. That's the quality amongst him. Santiago Jimenez, he had a very good season at Finer Wood. He has scored a lot of goals. He was very important in their campaign this season. Don't get me wrong. I think for Finer Wood, he had, let me pull up the numbers real quick, but he scored 23 goals, had 6 assists, coming this season, 23 goals in 30 games. Really, really good player, and what he did for Finerwood, there's no two ways about it. But what he showed in Mexico, he's been a disgrace for Mexico. He has not been good enough. He hasn't been efficient. He hasn't shown his quality. He hasn't shown anywhere near the ability that he has to put the ball in the back of the net for Finerwood. He doesn't show it for Mexico at all. But maybe you could argue the fact that, you know, he just has better players around him at Finerwood. But let's be for real. Santiago Jimenez himself looks bad, though. When he gets on the ball, he does not look comfortable. He does not look efficient in front of goal. He looks timid. He plays with a... He just doesn't play with a player that has the quality of someone that scored 23 goals at Finerwood when he's playing for Mexico. And maybe it's a product of his environment, but let's be for real. You know, to be a nominated at this award, you got to do something for your country. And he hasn't been good enough, not just at the Summer's Copa America, but in general for Mexico. Since he started getting more minutes, since, they dropped the likes of Raul Jimenez and the older guys, since he really be the one that was, the main guy up top, he has not been good enough. He has not been good enough for Mexico. So I can't put him in this really. I really can't put him as a realistic contender to win it. Christian Pulisic, a brilliant season this season at AC Milan. One of their better performers. Even when they were going through rough patches at AC Milan, he was still efficient for them. They played him in multiple positions. He was very, very important for Stefano Pioli. Very, very important. This is probably one of his, probably his most impressive season since his campaign. He has quality, Christian Pulisic. We knew this since we saw what he was able to do at Chelsea during lockdown. But the question is, could he stay healthy? Can he be efficient? Could he stay healthy and stay on the field? If he stays on the field, huge quality. He had 20 goal contributions this season, 12 goals, 8 assists in 36 matches. Very, very important. Now, his teams were not successful. AC Milan, they weren't successful this season. They got bounced in the group stages. They didn't really challenge for Serie A at all. The U.S. did not do well in Copa America, but I don't blame Pulisic for both. AC Milan is a big club. Christian Pulisic isn't asked to carry that sort of team. In fact, their main man is Rafael Leao. And the U.S. Pulisic, he showed up in that opening game against Bolivia. He was a big part of that. He started the tournament off with a wonder goal against Uruguay. I thought he was pretty good in that game. We just couldn't create enough opportunities. And against Panama, we went down 10 men, and it was always going to be a tricky game. I don't blame him for what happened to the U.S. getting eliminated in the group stages, especially based on what we've seen from Pulisic in the past with the U.S. He's been one of the main guys. He's been the main guy, and he's shown up in big-time moments for the U.S. So I'm not going to sit here and blame Pulisic for the lack of success for his teams, because I still think he rises despite that. But you need to do a little. Your country needs to show up a little bit more for you to be up for the award. I'd probably give it to Alphonso Davies yet again. Jonathan David, he also has a good chance too. Leon Bailey, I just think if he did more for Jamaica and had more of a consistent from the start and end of the season for Aston Villa, he could have won it. Adalberto Carrasquilla, forget about it. Santiago Jimenez, he's just not good enough for Mexico. And yes, Pulisic, he wasn't, his America did not do much, but Pulisic still showed up. He was still a good player. Santiago Jimenez did not show up. And I think it's a good to balance those two. And yeah, Jonathan David, Alphonso Davies, Pulisic, those are the big three. I'd probably I'll lean Jonathan David in the fact that he was more better in his club season in terms of scoring. He had, the goals that he had, and he was second leader in League One. I think that's really, really great. I think Alphonso Davies, he's always brilliant year in, year out. And Pulisic, he also had a really, really good season. So, it could be any of those three. Short break here coming up. When we come back, we'll react to Pep Guardiola not ruling out a contract extension at Manchester City.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC. To access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
before the break, we talked about the best player in CONCACAF. We react to Pep Guardiola. He has not ruled out a contract extension at Manchester City. Interesting turn of events there. There's been a lot of talk on Pep Guardiola. More likely than not, this might be his final season. There's been quotes in the past saying he's closer to the end since the beginning, which was obvious. That's obvious. He's been there for 9 seasons. But he was also saying things like, my time may be up, blah, blah, blah. A little bit things that had people thinking. And, when people heard it, people started running away with it. We obviously saw Jurgen Klopp leaving too, which kind of, put those thoughts more in our head. Okay, what now? It might be Guardiola's time as well. But, what he said recently, he said he's not ruling out an opportunity to sign another contract at Manchester City. And, towards the end of last season, he said stuff that made us think, okay, this is probably going to be his final season. But now, talking, the City is doing their preseason tour of the US, and he said, he could yet stay at Etihad. When Guardiola was speaking about this, he said, I know maybe I was not correct to say in the right moment when we won the Premier League, but I'm saying that I've been 8 years in Manchester City, so I'm not being here for 8 more years. That's why I'm closer to leaving than staying, but I didn't say I'm leaving. When I'm leaving, I will say I'm leaving, but I didn't say it. I will not rule out absolutely to extend the contract. I just want to be sure it's the right decision, not just for me, for the club. This is obviously going to be his ninth season at Manchester City's boss, which is the longest stint of his career by far. Actually more than Barcelona and Bayern Munich combined, with the fact that he managed 4 years at Barcelona and 3 years at Bayern Munich. That's 7. This is going to be his 9th season at Manchester City, and he's had unbelievable success since he's arrived at Manchester City. 6 Premier League titles, 6 Premier League titles in 8 seasons. Last 4 in a row, and he's won a treble: the Champions League, Club World Cup, FA Cups, AFL Cup. It's just unbelievable what he's won out of Manchester City. He also, speaking more about it, he said, I've not given it consideration because I haven't decided I'm leaving. When I decide, okay, it's over, first of all, I will talk with my sporting director, my chairman, my CEO. That's the first. I'll never do one step without my team, my club not knowing it. I'm incredibly grateful. When it happens, we will talk. When, I don't know what is the best. It doesn't mean to do that way is perfect or doing it another way is perfect, or maybe in a few months. I will say extend the contract, so I don't know. Obviously, I said a few weeks ago, if Guardiola does announce this being his last season, will this impact Manchester City's season? And I thought it would impact them in a phenomenal way, in terms of it will elevate them, it will add a new level of motivation that might not have been there right now. Because when you've won what you've won at Manchester City, 6 of the last 8 Premier Leagues, win the last 4 in a row, won a treble a few years ago, it's obvious that there's going to be some sort of lack of motivation there, because you've already won everything. Yes, with the new players coming in, there's that new extra push, but there's not much new players into the squad right now. I know Savinho, but that's about it. So it's absolutely clear that would have made it a huge impact. You saw what Liverpool were able to do with Jurgen Klopp. I think Jurgen Klopp's decision of leaving pushed on Liverpool longer in the title race than they really shouldn't have been in, because they were not near Manchester City or Arsenal, to that matter. They were not near to those levels at that point. They were a team in a midfield rebuild, but with the Jurgen Klopp announcement, I think it just pushed them a little bit further. They couldn't get over the line, and eventually they got out. But it was just the quality showing there. The team was not really at that level. They were in transition. I think this would have pushed Manchester City to new levels in terms of, I think that motivation and focus would have been there, different from game in, game out. But I think Guardiola finds himself in a position where he doesn't think Manchester City is going to drop off anytime soon. I don't think he's generally worried about these financial charges or breaches or anything. I don't think it goes through his mind at all. I think he looks at it at Manchester City. We have not done anything wrong, and and he says it many times. And if I believe that there's something wrong, I'll leave. Because the chairman, he talked about the trust he has in the chairman, and he believes they have not done anything wrong, and he's not worried about the charges or none of that. And as long as he believes that, and as long as he thinks he can impact Manchester City, and he can find himself new ways to continue to motivate himself, and he believes that the club still, the players still believe in him, and he's invested in the project here, why not? He's going to have unprecedented amount of success, and maybe there is an element of him chasing that unchaseable ghost in Sir Alex Ferguson. Maybe there's a part of him that says, maybe I can catch up to Sir Alex Ferguson. Maybe I can become the greatest manager of all time. Now, it's going to be hard because Sir Alex Ferguson has won 13 Premier Leagues. 13 Premier Leagues in Manchester, and Guardiola has only won 6 so far, 13 Premier Leagues. Yes, that will be very, very difficult. But maybe, he looks at himself, okay, just get as close as I can to really, because there's already a little bit of talks happening right now. So maybe if he can get to, a little bit, into double digits, maybe something of that sort, win another Champions League, continue to have these dominant, efficient years. Maybe he's trying to chase Sir Alex Ferguson, not in terms of Premier League, but in terms of legacy. Because let's be for real, I don't think he needs to win 13, 14 Premier Leagues to catch up to Sir Alex Ferguson, especially in the fact that he did 6 and 8 years. If he's able to have 10 and 13 years or something like that, 10 and 14 years, then, and maybe win another Champions League or something. If you look at the consistency and the efficiency and how he's done it at Manchester City, why can't he be considered the greatest of all time in the Premier League? I think he's already put himself in this position that he's widely looked at as the greatest manager of all time, not just because of the accomplishments that he's had, but because of what he's done, not because of the accomplishment he's had, but what he's done in terms of revolutionizing the game, changed the way people think about football, the tiki-taka way, the possession-oriented style of play, the way he started the new era at Barcelona, the way he was able to take this style of play and implement it throughout multiple leagues, including the Bundesliga, but, more difficult in the Premier League. That's a league that's relied more on physicality and pace, but instead he brought the silky nature of football, possession-based system into the Premier League and adapted the way Premier League fans think about football. That is probably his biggest accomplishment, really. It really is, and he's an unbelievable coach, and maybe he wants to continue to increase his legacy in the Premier League. He has glowing things to say about English football. He loves English football. The pressure is not there that there is managing at Barcelona in La Liga. The questions you get asked in the presser, you don't really have to worry about that in England. So, yeah, maybe he just likes where he is. He's comfortable at Manchester City. So, yeah, I think he will stay. I really think he will stay, because I think a lot of the comments or a lot of the rumors has been kind of people trying to make it happen rather than, just people reading too much in between the lines rather than just, hearing out what him exactly has to say. Short break here coming up. When we come back, we'll react to some of the top soccer headlines. break, we discussed Pep Guardiola not ruling out a contract extension at Manchester City. We move on to react to some of the top soccer headlines going on the soccer world. As I pull up my charger real quick as my batteries on my laptop are starting to run out. We have to start off with Erik Ten Hag comment saying Manchester United are playing catch up on their squad depths. Erik Ten Hag talking in LA as they're doing their US tour, their preseason tour. He talked about Manchester United, saying Erik Ten Hag needs to, or Erik Ten Hag was talking about how United needs to boost the depth of the squad ahead of the season. So United have currently signed Lenny Yoro and Joshua Zirkzee to replace the likes of Rafael Varane and Anthony Martial, who have both left the club. Speaking during a press conference, Erik Ten Hag said, "We need the squad to be as strong as possible. We already have a very good two buys. So when everyone is fit, we have a team who can beat everyone. But with the squad depths, we have to catch up because we had injuries. We are vulnerable. We have to avoid this by getting less injuries. And second, our squad has to be that good. The quality we have in depth, we have to catch up. But even more because this season will be the survival of the fittest. We are looking in all of the positions to reinforce, and we are looking for a plan in our squad to reassure ourselves we already occupied. We work continually, and the good things is we already signed 2 players, and it belongs to a club like Man United that are looking for opportunities that are better, and we still have time until August 30th. The load and pressure on players is immense with the new model in Europe. I just mentioned it. It's survival of the fittest." John Herdman, former Canadian manager, current manager of Toronto FC, former manager of the Canadian men's national team and the Canadian women's national team. Not back-to-back, obviously. Canadian men's national team for a few years, and then before that he had a long stretch, the Canadian women's national team. There was some reports post the issue going on with Canadian women's soccer team with the drone coverage and all that. There was some reports from TSN, which is kind of like the ESPN of Canada, reports saying that this is something that's been going on in Canadian soccer in terms of filming other teams' close practices, and that the men's team has also done that. 17 players on Canadian, according to reports from TSN, it said 17 players on Canada's men's soccer team attended a briefing on August 31st, 2021, as they watched as head coach John Herdman played them a video that showed Honduras' national team closed practice a day earlier. This is reported by TSN, which is incredible that they were able to get access to this. Now, John Herdman, and sources say, and according to this, John Herdman, and also it was discovered that Brave Priestman likely was aware of what was going on, highly likely aware of the incident, which led to a suspension by Canadian soccer. And it's a messy situation. It really is what's going on here with Canadian soccer. Let's go to John Herdman. So when John Herdman obviously came out defending himself, saying, "I've always gone into the Olympic Games, World Cup, big events with integrity in mind and the ability to compete at the highest level, following the rules and processes. So for my side, I'll help Canada Soccer when I can with the review, but I'm highly confident that in my time as a head coach at an Olympic Games or World Cup, we've never been involved in any of those activities. And obviously, he said Olympic Games or World Cup, talking about his time with the Canadian women's team and men's team, because the women's team played in Olympic Games and the men's team. He's coached the men's team at a World Cup. He's coached the women's team at a World Cup. The Canadian team actually won bronze under John Herdman at the 2012 game in London, and the 2016 games in Rio. He was also head coach of the Canadian women's team when they went to the World Cup. And I think he's been charging the 2015 World Cup, I believe. We can check this actually right now. John Herdman, he's coached multiple World Cups for Canada. Obviously, he coached them at the 2022 World Cup, the men's team at the 2022 World Cup. He coached the women's team in the 2015 World Cup and the 2015 World Cup. I believe that's the only time he coached them at the World Cup, actually. Yeah, he coached them at 2 Olympics and the 2015 World Cup. And then he left in 2018 to take over with the men's job. He was not the coach of the team at the 2019 World Cup. So yeah, he coached them at 2 Olympic Games and 1 World Cup, and he did really well with them, got the men's job. And then he quit to coach Major League Soccer's team, Toronto FC. Bev Priestman, who's the current head coach of the Canadian women's team, she actually was the former assistant to John Herdman, and then succeeded Kenneth Hayner Moeller as Canadian women's coach after being sent home from the Paris Olympics after allegations. She was actually succeeded by Kenneth Hayner Moeller as Canadian women's coach right now, after Beth Priestman has been sent home from the Olympics after the allegations of the drones and all that. And he, Herdman, speaking about the spine candle, said it came as a surprise and a shock. He said he found this out when he was landing in France to see his son, Jay Herdman, play for New Zealand when they take on Guinea on Wednesday at the Olympic Games. John Herdman's son, Jay Herdman, is actually playing for New Zealand at these Olympic Games as an underage player. So yeah, that's it's very interesting stuff here. Very, very interesting stuff. But Herdman said he was devastated for the Canadian players. He said, in moments like this, we have to respect that they've put some work to be there. I've been a head coach for a team that's competed for medals, won medals, and those players need the spotlight on their talents at this moment in time. This isn't the time of nitpick about scouting at tournaments. Whatever happened, Canada Soccer is going to be conducting their internal reviews, which is the right thing to do. And I'll be happy to help them with the process for sure, to tell them about the experiences we had in our competitions, etc. But for me, this is about the players. We're really putting a spotlight on something that isn't what this Olympics is about, which is their talent and their moment to shine. And I think the quicker we got back there, the better. Now, Christian Sinclair, the former captain of the Canadian women's national team, it says former captain, but is she not the captain right now? Okay. Oh, she's retired from the Canadian women's national team. Yes, I forgot about that. Okay. She's retired. But yeah, former captain Christian Sinclair, speaking about it on social media, said, I want to be clear that having been a national team player for 23 years, we were never shown or discussed drone footage in team or individual meetings I've been present for. But yeah, it's such an interesting conversation, and I'll see how big of an impact this sort of search has. Canadian soccer, they've been through a lot. this is another thing that they have to manage, and I'll be very interested to see how this goes. Thank you guys for tuning into the GSMC Soccer Podcast presented by the GSMC Sport Network. Your support means a lot to us, so please remember to subscribe to the show and leave a positive review. It really does make a difference. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram for more content and updates. Thank you once again, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.